Today on episode 4 of this spiritual fix, we're talking about some of the major sects of meditation that are popular, as well as the 3 major categories of meditation.
Hypnosis, mindfulness, meditation, past life regression, RTT, spirituality.
This spiritual fix. 2 mystical mamas hacking the self-help game.
With Anna Fiddler. And Kristina Wiltsey.
All right. So today on this spiritual fix, we are going to be talking about different types of meditation.
We are.
Well, I am. And you have done a lot of different types of meditation. And so I think it's really important that you obviously put in all of your different types, because you spent time at an Osho temple in India, right? And then you and I obviously met at Vipassana, and you've done just as many different meditation types as I have. I kind of think that this is important to do because we can go into depth about any of these different types of meditations that we've done, or that we've like experienced, or that we've seen, or that we've known other people to. And it gets really, really confusing when you get into this world. And I don't actually know what it's called, but I'm sure there's some sort of like spiritual whitewashing, like there's greenwash, and there's all these different types of washes in which like everything jumps on the bandwagon. I read a statistic that said that in 2015, the meditation segment alone market
Of
was
the new
worth,
age self-help.
right, was worth $959 million a year. And it's been growing. It's basically targeted to be at 2.08 billion by 2021. So basically a year from now. And I'm sure, and that number was like from 2019, that was pre-pandemic. And I can only imagine that stuff has just skyrocketed, like has grown even more than the 11% a year that it was.
Right, which is great. We need more meditation.
I agree. I think I'm always in favor of saying, actually look at the good side, which is that people are looking to meditation and they're looking to actually like look at their minds. And that's really, really great. There's also the setbacks of like, there's probably going to be a lot of dead ends in there. There's probably going to be a lot of like bum things that you can do.
And commercialism and
Right.
false advertising.
Ultimately, whether it's in this life or the next, we're all going to get out of here. So like, I'm not ultimately worried. And it's like, you kind of have a lesson with that. But yeah. So I also read in this same article, which I'll link in the show notes, is that the 3 main types, the most popular types of meditation in this segment are Transcendental, Kadampa, and Shambhala.
Where does Theravada fall into those?
So those are, so I'll go into them, but so Transcendental Meditation is the Maharishi, it's the Beatles Maharishi, right?
Right.
Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I actually was going to go to his university in Iowa. I was going to go get my grad degree from it because I was so into it. So
I went to Grinnell College. I was just like a hop, skip, and a jump from that.
From Fairfield.
We met some people from there.
Yeah.
They would come and they would put on talks or whatever.
I loved it.
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
I remember one man was like, can I sleep at your place, or can I stay at your place? And we were like, sure. And we went, gave him the couch and some bedding, and we went upstairs. And then the next day, one of our roommates were like, who was that guy you let sleep over? And we're like, oh, just some visitor from that meditation university next door. He's like, did you know that the dude doesn't sleep? He was in full lotus position all night because I came and went, and like the guy never slept.
Yeah. So the only reason that I did not go to Iowa after I came back, I traveled around the world for a year, and I came back and I met my boyfriend at the time, and like was totally going to move there because I was so fascinated by, they do a bunch of studies about the effects of meditation, not only on the individual, but also on the community.
Right.
So they do the square root of 2% thing, where if you get the square root of 2% of the population, which is not that many people for the entire world, it's like 8,000 something. If you get that many people to meditate on a certain thing or in a certain thing, it actually changes. They're trying to prove, and I think that they have like, loosely proven, I don't know how strong it is, but that it actually decreases violence. It decreases crime. It like you can get all these different outcomes that you're looking for by doing that, by basically putting everyone's mind into it. And this is a place where you get paid to meditate. So in Fairfield, Iowa, they have these two massive pagodas. They have one for men and one for women. And you actually log in, right? Like you actually you clock in, and then you go and you do the yogic flying transcendental meditation. And so Luke, actually, my husband, was like really brave enough to like go in and actually see the yogic flying. In which
I saw it. They're like hopping on their knees.
they are. They're like they're in lotus, and they hop up and down on these mattresses, which is in that pagoda. Anyway, that's really making a trite comment on transcendental meditation. Transcendental meditation is fundamentally mantra meditation, right? Which is kind of one of the big categories of different types of mindfulness meditation that you can get into. It is Hindu in origin and not Buddhist, because it comes from a mantra, and the mantra is usually in Sanskrit, which comes from Hindu. And so the idea is that you can only get transcendental meditation from someone who is a teacher of transcendental meditation.
And they give you your specific mantra.
And they give you your mantra, and you cannot tell it. Like, you go online, and a couple of times I've been like, give me an example of a mantra. Like, I'd love to know an example of a mantra. And like, no one will tell you.
Do you know anyone who is a big transcendental person? Because I know one person.
Do you?
Yeah. My sister, she's been doing it since, I don't know, I want to say maybe 8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
She's been doing it. She was given her mantra. I always wanted her to do Vipassana like me, which is Theravada tradition, but that's a time commitment. She was a single mother. She's been doing that transcendental meditation with the mantra every morning for the last 8-10 years. She does 10 minutes, rain or shine. She does her 10-minute thing with her mantra thing. I don't even know what she's really doing in there. She has changed. It works. Like, whatever she's doing, it's freaking working, and it's working for her. I'm not sure it would work for me. I'm not sure I'm a mantra lady, but it's working for her, and it's beautiful to see. She's focused. She's happy. She's peaceful. She used to be a little rocky, a little rough around the edges. She is smooth. You know, she's like polished stone now.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Wow. It's I love it anyway, just because that town. I mean, I loved the structure of the university because they did like one class a month. Like, you didn't have to go and like, they had kirtans. That was like their social stuff. I love kirtan. I'm just like obsessed with it. And then the whole town was just like all within this intention of trying to bring peace and light into the world. And I think that was amazing.
That's cool.
So that was one of the top 3.
So what kind of people do you think would this type of meditation appeal to?
I honestly think that mantra meditation in general is very good for people who have very active minds. I also think that mantra meditation is very good for emotional processing, to whatever extent, like, you can use the language to be able to do it. So if you had to kind of take a test to say, like, this is
what's your best meditation for you,
right? Whenever I'm really whenever my mind has gone into like an obsessive state or a compulsive state, mantra is the thing that pulls me down and back into my body.
Okay.
Yeah. So, other people will have reasons to do it. The lineage is incredibly strong. There's a lot of support for people who want to do transcendental meditation. And I think that sort of support is very important in a lot of ways. And it's been around for a long time. I mean, it's been popular for 60 years now, at least in America. And I don't know if it's ever been called a cult. Not anytime recently, right? Like, in the sense of like...
And the difference between a cult and anything else is just a cult has manipulation and negative intentions behind it. And this doesn't seem to. They just want to wake up the world and make the world happier.
Yeah. They're literally just they're doing work on brain function and how it affects, like, it's interesting. So speaking of cults, though, the second one that I'm going to talk about is
a cult. Just kidding.
It's been called a cult. It's really interesting. It's called the New Kadampa tradition. So it's NKT.
How do we spell that? Okay.
Kadampa. And I'm going to I'm going to literally, I have to very, very strongly caveat the fact that my only exposure personally to Kadampa.
It's got 5-star reviews on Yelp.
My only exposure to Kadampa is that a center was in the old Fourth Ward down the road from in Atlanta where I used to live. There was a center that got put up, and it was right next to the Revolution Donuts, and I was always like, wow.
I love those donuts.
I know, they're so
if you're listening and you live in Atlanta, get those Revolution Donuts.
Yeah, with the pandemic, the lines just like wrap around the block
Oh my
now.
God, it's heaven.
Anyway, so the new Kadampa tradition has a bit of flack for being a cult because of the fact that there's the traditional like revered teacher who's actually getting sexual,
Wait, what?
sexually abusing, you could say, because they're in a position of power. They're sexually abusing students.
Who is this?
And then
In Atlanta.
No.
Oh.
This is everywhere. This is one of the top 3 meditations that people are using. It's a type of mindfulness
But wait,
meditation.
what does it have to do with a leader having sex with its followers?
It's not the leader. It's one of the second leaders was accused and basically forced to step down because he had been having sex with his students. Okay. And the leader was like, oh no, this is a blessing because you're beginning the white drops of enlightenment. And this is great karma to be like, like that in and of itself, when you have a situation where you don't have, the only text that's allowed there is the text of the guy, of the master.
Is he a living person? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's the third Buddha. They call him the third Buddha.
Okay.
And you have these situations where you have corruption, and you have these situations where abuse or things that would normally in this world be considered bad being said that it's actually good. And you're like, and then you also have this whole situation where you can read about it, but it like basically talks about this is good karma and this is bad karma. Like if you talk bad about us, that's bad karma. You're accumulating.
I'm already not
bad
feeling
karma.
this sect.
Yeah. When I was reading about it, I was reading about like they said something about like how you couldn't question things because that would basically lead you into a level of hell. And I was like, that sounds like Catholicism. That sounds like this kind of like savior. Let me scare you into actually keeping to your
manipulate
thing.
you with fear and greed to make you do what I want you to do.
But technically, all of that aside of the actual application of it, it's a mindfulness meditation, right? So it has to do with the fact that it tries to seek happy. You're basically seeking happiness by recognizing that you're empty, like that you're mindful of the current moment now, and by looking at the current moment now, you stop thinking about all the other stuff. What I was referencing in our last episode about this was that I read an article, particularly from this one woman who was talking about how she spent so much time administering and to teach the students that she just was faking being happy. Like she wasn't actually happy. She was just like, I'm happy, because they really encourage faking it till you make it, which to me is not being in the present now, because the present now is not always happy.
Right.
So that is NKT. And
I'm not feeling it, but I would love to meet someone who it's worked for them and have a good conversation. I'm not writing it off as culty, but because I don't know everything about it, but it seems a little sketchy.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for me, there is such a tendency, like if you hear, like for people who are so thirsty for this kind of stuff, like they're so thirsty for something different, like it's like, and that's just massive amounts of people in Western culture who are just like, this world is bullshit. Like the world that we're growing up in, which we have to be consumers all the time, and we have to like pretend that we're happy, and we have to think that consumerism is going to make us happy. As soon as you hear anything that's like, you can be happy by just letting it all go, or something along those lines, something from Buddhism, it's incredibly appealing. And it's very easy to kind of go down a slightly different version of a good thing and kind of end up somewhere you don't want to
be. And maybe it's exactly what people need at that time in their life. It's just not, it doesn't sound like it's for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I would love to hear from an NKT person who does not think it is any of those things and all that kind of stuff, because it's obviously popular for a reason.
So shoot us a DM on Instagram.
Yeah.
At This Spiritual Fix, and let us know if you want us to interview you or just have a chat.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. The next one is Shambhala, which is also mindfulness meditation. Shambhala is not considered, like there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing good about it. Like I actually don't even know the guru, but I do know that it is one of the 3, and it's one of the mindfulness meditations. So what I'm going to do, we've covered those 3, and I want to just touch on Vipassana. We could say mindfulness, which is the moment, paying attention to the present moment, right? Which is watching your breath. Practically, it usually means like you're watching your breath, you're doing pranayama, or you're just like watching your thoughts. Like you're sitting and you're meditating and you're watching your thoughts.
Right. Matt Kahn, which I really love, says, whatever practice you choose, it definitely has to have two things: an element of loving kindness and an element of breath work, because that anchors you in the now. That's just a sub note. I just really like that. I don't like
that's great.
the whole watching the mind contents, because you can just go anywhere in that. But like when you have that breath, that anchors you in the present moment like nothing.
Yep, I agree. So speaking of breath that anchors you in the present moment, do you want to explain Vipassana, since that's obviously the lineage that we came from?
Yes. So I love Vipassana. It comes from the Theravada tradition in the sense that it is coming from Buddhism, but it's coming from Buddha. So it's not Buddhism in the sense of like, if Buddha is pointing to the moon and everyone is looking at his fingers and not at the moon, like Vipassana is looking at the moon. It's not looking at Buddha's fingers. I hope that analogy makes sense.
That's a great analogy. And I think that they say that it's non-denominational.
Non-denominational, non-worship. Like you can go there and you go to these 10-day. So basically how it works is to learn Vipassana as taught by S.N. Goenka. You take a 10-day meditation retreat in silence. I don't want to even call it a retreat. It's more like a boot camp or brain surgery from the inside out. It's non-denominational, which is great because there's people of all religions. You can see priests there, Catholics, monks, Jews. I mean, every religion's there because it does not go into religion at all. There's no Buddha worship. It's just like basically, let's examine the contents of the mind. Let's examine how the mind works. Let's make it work better for us. And in the process, you're going to burn off sankhara, which is basically karma or impurities, which sounds esoteric. But when you go in there and you leave, it makes sense. For example, I had panic attacks before I did my first Vipassana course. I've never had a panic attack since. I had a friend who was borderline alcoholic, maybe too much alcohol. She did a course, came out, never touched alcohol again. So you go in and you come out totally changed. And the great thing about it is it's free, and they will not take a donation unless you complete the course and say it changed your life. So that's a side note. Like you just feel like there's no weird corruption going on because it's free.
Yeah. The only, I think that it has maintained its purity to an amazing extent. I think that given that it is relatively new, I really hope that it stays true.
Because S.N. Goenka died, and so the fear is, well, with the main teacher being dead, what will happen? But I think he really structured it properly, and I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah, I think as long as they don't keep adding precepts to it, which is one of the things, like, because when you first, because I love this, I think I mentioned this one Vipassana teacher, assistant teacher who I talked to, and he was one of the first students of Goenka, and he talked about how in the first versions of the courses, they didn't do any of the noble silence, they didn't do anything like that. They were like all just smoking and talking in the afternoon, like all the time. Like they didn't have to do any noble silence, they didn't have to abstain from eating, they didn't have to abstain from anything, but they created a structure which made it so that anybody could come in as long as they were able to follow the 5 precepts of a new student, which is you have to sleep on low
and lofty beds.
Like non-lofty beds.
Non-lofty beds. I don't even know what a lofty bed is.
You limit your eating after noon. You don't harm anything. Which
means vegetarian meals.
Yep. You maintain noble silence. Actually, is that even a precept? And then I can't remember the other one, but I'll link to them.
We'll put it in the notes.
Yeah. So
the noble silence is awesome, though. Like just 10 days away without talking. Oh, that's amazing.
It is.
If that calls to you, it's a sign that you were meant to take that course. If it sounds scary, disgusting, who wants 10 days of silence? It's not for you.
Yeah. I made an analogy of this the other day, and I think it worked really well. What happens when you go to a Vipassana course in noble silence? You think that not talking is hard, but you actually realize it's really, really easy, and it's actually really good because most of the time it's like, have you ever been to the seashore and you're above it's like really crowded and you're above the water and you can hear, like when you're above water, you can just hear all the yelling. Like you can hear everyone yelling and screaming and just like having a good time around you. Vipassana, when you go into noble silence, it's like going underwater. Right. And so all of a sudden, every voice outside becomes muted and your own thoughts become really loud. Really, really loud. So when you finally come back up to the surface, it's kind of like being completely
A
like
little jarring
it's,
after
it's
10
super
days.
jarring.
It's
Yeah.
jarring, but they ease you into it because they have a day where they break the silence prior to.
Right. So fundamentally, what Vipassana meditation does is it first teaches you Anapana, which is a process of watching the breath. And if you're not used to meditating, this is a really, really good beginner step. I remember when I first did this, I had a really hard time with quieting my mind at all or maintaining any focus or concentration. And I actually had to get to the point where I would watch my nose and I would watch the air coming in and out of it. And then every single time that I did that for like 5 breaths, I would say a word. And that word was my reward for looking at 5 breaths. And then eventually I like extended it to 6 and then to 7. And then eventually I didn't have to do the word. But that's how bad it was.
By the way, that is not what they teach you to do in the Vipassana course.
No. But
That was just like your thing.
No, that was totally my thing. No, that was like my mind was so out of control when I went to that first Vipassana that is what I had to do. I had to create a crutch. The way I thought of it was like I had to create a crutch.
So if you could go 5 breaths without being distracted, you got to say a word
In my head. I literally would just say, "Good job." And then I would keep going.
Great. That is so cute.
It's kind of cute, but it's a good, the reason I tell that is because even if you are just as bad as I would, if your mind
I
is
was
as
terrible at it.
diseased
ADHD.
as mine was out of balance, was out of control, was just like a monkey mind more than you could ever imagine, it starts you off easy. And then you learn that for 3 days and then you go into the actual Vipassana meditation. And everybody has different experiences. Like Anna says that everyone's life has changed. Sometimes it's not really, or sometimes you don't even notice it, or everyone just kind of has a different experience with it.
Right.
But it is it's really popular. It's growing, and it is something that is a very good primer for. It teaches you skills that you can use and then apply to any meditation if you choose for some reason to stop doing Vipassana.
Right. So, and the thing about it is it's applicable to everyday life. Like it doesn't teach you a mantra, which say, for example, are you really going to be saying your mantra at work? But like I can focus on my breath while I'm driving. It's a body scan based meditation. Like I can scan my body when I'm sitting in the doctor's office waiting for something. I can observe body sensation when I'm working. Like you can apply it to every single moment of your life. So I really like the continuity of it. I would almost say it's an art of living versus a practice in the sense that it's not isolated to just sitting on the mat every day and meditating. Like it's a practice you carry into it infiltrates your entire world and your entire life. To me, it's been fundamentally the most important decision I've ever made, and probably second to my children. It's the greatest gift I've ever been given.
Yeah, I would agree. Even though I was just thinking about it, it's been 10 years since I've done a course, which is insane.
It's not been that long, has it?
Yeah, since we did our Satipatthana Sutra course back in 10 years ago, but the gift of Dhamma still keeps giving within me. I still do Vipassana all the time. I don't adhere as strictly to it as I used to in terms of the precepts and the different things that you have to do for that. But yeah, so that's Vipassana. So we've talked about mindfulness meditation, which talks about the here and the now. We've talked about mantra meditation, and we've talked about Vipassana.
Which is body scanning.
Right? So it's looking at the sensations as they come up. All of these meditations, either like mindfulness meditation and mantra meditation, are really primarily, and actually Vipassana, are all kind of primarily concerned about looking at the contents of the body in particular, right? And just being still and just saying, I'm going to look inside. Other meditations that do that are, there's different varieties of that. So mantra meditation could also be pranayama, which is the practice of actually controlling your breath to reach trance states and to stimulate the alpha waves, which is what happens during meditative states, is another one that's like mantra. It's kind of like it helps you along if your mind gets really bored really easily or something like that, because it allows you to kind of go deeply into yourself, but you kind of have help getting there, right? It's like, I'm going to follow a dot on the wall, or I'm going to look at a flame. That's a Hindu one that they do in yoga in particular, is that you gaze at a flame in order to be able to actually get into a deeper state, right? Which is like not samadhi necessarily, but close to this like state in which everything becomes, it's a trance-like state that you can get stuck in a good way.
Total side note, have you read the book, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar by Roald Dahl? in it, this man goes to India. He talks to a guru. He learns the art of like watching a flame, and it's a children's story. It is the best children's story if you want to. If you have little bodhisattva children, it's a great book.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Side note.
See that. So what that does is it helps us to be able to actually see things without needing to. Like if you're just not the person who wants to, you know, watch your breath and you're having really trouble or you don't have time to go to a 10-day meditation, like you can do these other things that will help you still look inside. So then we're moving from like, let me look at the contents of my mind as they are right now, which is like what I would call those guys, whether it's pure, just like unadulterated, I'm going to look at it, or I'm going to look at it with a little bit of help with like a mantra or pranayama or something, or flame gazing. And then we go more into like the dynamic meditations, right? So that's stuff like I'm going to get you to talk about dynamic meditation in a minute, but it's the ecstatic dance, anything that requires the body to move. So walking meditation, yoga is a great example. So yoga can obviously involve long periods of sitting and, you know, doing this, but it basically asks that there is an on mat and an off mat experience. And that, you know, you're doing practices that are facilitating your process of yoking yourself a union with God, right? So it's all about union with God. It's all about, okay, I'm going to use all these techniques and I'm going to do that. I'm going to make myself the clearest channel and the clearest vessel in order to be able to accept the experience of God within your body, right? Which is different than all those other ones, which are just telling you to look at your mind, right? Like the Buddhist ones are much more about like, let me look at myself as I am, and I'm not expecting some higher power to come in and help me, right? Yoga and other dynamic meditations are basically saying there is a higher power that I want to become open to. Can you explain dynamic meditation in particular? I feel like that's a bit of a hybrid of a couple of different ones.
Right. So, well, I spent about 2 years at the Osho ashram in India, and Osho taught a lot of different meditations. And he said, which I love, he said that most minds are not ready to like sit on a mat and just do a body scan or just focus on breathing. There's so much pent up, suppressed emotion in the human body because of society. Yes. And in order to get your mind to the point where you can even sit quietly, you have got to go through catharsis. You have got to throw out and expunge yourself of a lot of repressed emotion. So dynamic meditation is one of them. He has dynamic, he has Kundalini. Yep. He's got all these different ones. If you go on YouTube or to the website, you can find them all. And they're great for a novice meditator, someone who's really intimidated by sitting on a mat. They deal a lot with catharsis, yelling, screaming, dancing, letting yourself move whatever position you want, jumping in a way where you're hammering a certain chakra. Energetically, shaking in a way that will help facilitate Kundalini movement. Mm-hmm. So his are not necessarily like the end goal. Like I'm going to be a great meditator one day and I'm going to do dynamic meditation every morning. No, like it's more like, okay, I'm curious about meditation. I think I don't have it in me to sit on a mat for an hour, or I don't really want to sit and recite a mantra for 10 minutes. But jumping up and down and crying and screaming and thrashing around and like just getting these pent up emotions inside me is what I want. Then it's a great way to go. He was the first one I started with when I was learning to meditate, and I feel like it was great. You remove a lot of unconscious resistance with those meditations.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, because for me, the way that I see the structure of the world is that there is the divine masculine, which is looking at the contents of the mind, right? Just like going very, very deeply into your own mind, into your own body, into what is sitting there naturally, and kind of using the mind as the tool to do that, whether it's by focusing the mind or concentrating the mind. And then there's this totally divine feminine aspect, which is that you have an emotional motor in your body, and that emotional motor is stalled or backed up for a lot of people. And therefore, you can do stuff to physically move your body to be able to like actually unblock it so that then you can go into the mind if you choose to. Or you can just keep going on the emotional motor side, because that is the divine feminine has a totally amazing aspect to it as well.
And I think Vipassana is more of the masculine.
It is.
However, once you start to really get into it, I think by like the 8th day of the course, it's very feminine actually. I feel like you do pull up and remove a lot of deep stuff in the body.
Yeah, a lot of the subconscious stuff, but you're still using the mind to do it as opposed to using the body to do it.
Right, that's true.
And I think that that's the biggest difference, is that recognizing that the body is a way to the divine as well, as much as we, are kind of stuck in bodies, or some people, like, that's kind of my view. But so that is kind of what I think, especially with yoga. And I think that's why yoga is so popular. The reason that I think that yoga is so popular is because of the fact that it deals with this fact that people have a lot of pent up emotions and they need to be able to do it. And the mind body connection that gets created in yoga, it makes it so that you're actually able to facilitate and siphon off that excess energy that builds up emotionally in your body. And, you go to a Kundalini yoga class. Oh my God. Like and the ones that I've been in, everyone's like breaking down like all the time. It's like they're physically moving their body, and they are physically and they're emotionally releasing pent up energy that's just stuck in their body. And, the holotropic breathing is a great example of that as well, right? It's something in which you're actually processing the emotions in your body. It's a type of meditation that helps you to get that emotional motor running. And then there's the last kind of category is what I call of meditation, is the visualization and the kind of journey meditation.
I never consider those meditations. I know they call them that, like, we're going on a meditation. Imagine you're on a beach. Like, I always just, in my world, I categorize that as visualization. I don't see that as meditation. To me, meditation's about being in the now. I guess am I a little biased or
Well, it's
prejudiced?
really interesting that you say that, because I went through the exact same journey myself. Because after I came...
On a beach?
I was in my mind on a beach. It's a very good point, because when you get to this we call it meditation because you're sitting on the ground and you're like in your head, but you're actually going somewhere. When I first came out of Vipassana, I was like so strongly kind of after I moved away and I was living on the land of a medicine woman. She was my teacher at the time. I was really, really strict, and I was like, this isn't meditation. Like, this visualization stuff is not meditation. Like, I can't abide by that, because what I do of like austere, like sittings of strong determination where I can't move a muscle for an hour, that is meditation. Like, this is just like airy fairy, fluffy new age stuff, right? But then I started to recognize that it was just a third type. I really just think of it as a third type, because what it does is it allows you to penetrate the subconscious, the unconscious parts of you, by traveling in your mind to another place, right? It's what I call the inner realms. It's like, imagine your body is an external thing, your mind sits within your body, and then within your mind are inner realms that you can go to process emotionally and other subconscious things.
It's more of a
and bring them more
symbolic
conscious.
place. It's like a symbolic meditation or something.
I don't know. I don't even know about that, because, okay, so Rudolf Steiner is a great example of, he did anthroposophy. I can't even actually say it. And Rudolf Steiner and Theosophists in general, they were very much in favor of this idea that there are higher worlds that you can go to help you process your stuff. And they don't exist in a human body, and they exist within your minds, but they're shared. They're communal places.
Okay.
Right? And so the whole idea is that you can get into a trance state. It's kind of like, this is the place you go to when you get into a trance. Like, once you kind of quiet the mind enough, and once you kind of get the emotions kind of under control enough, you can go to these places as a destination, and they're still in you. They still are you, but they're just giving you consciousness. They're giving conscious form in the form of imagination, but like and imagination is the wrong word, but in the form of visualization, they're giving conscious form to your subconscious issues, right?
Yeah.
So I have a meditation where I can see a demon sitting in front of me, or I can see a whatever, or I go to a planet, or I do whatever. And you could say that's not real. You could say that's in my imagination. But when I come out of it, I feel better. And I feel like I've resolved something.
Right. And the brain probably doesn't know the difference.
That doesn't know the difference, right? So if you want to expand your playground of meditation beyond just your physical body and beyond just your mind and the contents of your mind, like the contents of your mind as they are, then you go to these higher worlds.
I think a great takeaway from all of this is that people interested in meditation have a lot of different choices. Just because you go to a meditation class or you find an app on your phone or you try something, it doesn't work for you. It doesn't mean that another one won't. It's like food. For every different person, there's different flavors that appeal to you, and just keep trying. And I remember S.N. Goenka in the Vipassana course says, if you go and dig a hole here and you dig, and then you get bored and you move over here and you dig a hole, and then you go find another place to dig a hole, you're never going to hit water. So he's like, in the beginning of your journey, like you might dig a few holes trying to find the right hole. But once you find one that works for you, dig and stay on it and you will hit water.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's a great example. Like flirt with different techniques and find one that works for you. And when you find the one that works, stay on it and go deeper.
Yep. Yep.
And you'll hit the water.
And ultimately, I think that if you go into if you're the type of person who can use an app to be able to get into meditative state, then that's fantastic. That's exactly what you need. But also recognize that there are different varieties of emotional processing meditation, right? So there are different things in which if you feel like you're just too jittery or you just have too many things on your mind or you keep getting with those what if scenarios, like sometimes that's an overactive mind. It is an overactive mind, but sometimes an overactive mind is stimulated by stuck emotions in my experience. So I've worked with a lot of people. And the first thing we always do is we try and stimulate and start the emotional motor, because once that happens, then the mind quiets because it's not stimulated by something that is dying for your attention.
Right. And I think if people need that, like we're in a pandemic, so, you know, you can't go to meditation centers as easily, but there's, you know, you hear the term life coach. What's a life coach? Life coaches are people that can work with you, or healers or shamans, like all of that category of people are people who have been on this journey. They've tried 1,000 things. They can meet you and know what works for you. So some people could potentially, you want to learn to meditate, well, book a session with a life coach or a shaman or someone, even on a Zoom call, and they can help guide you like what's going to be the best tool for you.
Yep. And I think ultimately, if there is one thing that I could say that to keep in mind, like, because we did kind of talk about the idea that people who are on spiritual paths can be vulnerable to things that may not be the best for them. Of course, then again, I'm just like, well, that's probably just in your karma. But the idea is that dig a hole till you find water, but also recognize that if every other hole is then blocked off to you, like if there's an encouragement for rigidity and saying that this is the only way, that is just bullshit. Like you just stay away from that.
Red flag.
Yeah, it's a total red flag. If someone says this is the way and this is the only way and you have to do it this way and this teacher is the only buddy who knows it and this teacher has figured it out. This teacher has figured it out and no other teacher has figured it out. And you can't read anything else or you can't do anything else. Like
red flag.
It's a red flag. And the more adaptable that we are, the less rigid that we are, the less rigid our mind will be and the more pliable and the more able that we are to actually like help our minds. Like I remember I had a boyfriend. This is my final story. One of my boyfriends when I was in my 20s for a long time, he got sick. He got cancer when he was like 20 and he went to an Ayurvedic diet. And he went into an Ayurvedic diet and he started taking herbs and he was able to like basically put his cancer into remission himself with that experience, right? With changing his diet, making sure that he was like eating for his doshas, which we could talk about at a later time, but he was basically following a very strict like Indian medicine diet. And what he recognized was that his mind was becoming so rigid around the principles of it, thinking that it was going to save his life. That if he ate a single thing that wasn't in his diet or that wasn't good for him, or if he missed a single ritual, or if he did anything like this, he was holding on to it so tightly to save his life that he started to recognize that was the disease that was coming out, right? Do you see what I'm saying? Like in the sense that like the rigidity, the need to keep to it, and the inability to be vulnerable to any change or any deviation, thinking that it was going to kill him, was almost as bad as the actual disease itself, right? And so as soon as he learned to kind of relax and just be like, it's okay, like I can have a piece of cake this one time and I'm okay with it because I'm adaptable. I don't have to be this rigid. It's not going to kill me if I do this. That adaptability is incredibly important aspect of any spiritual practice. Acceptance, yeah. There you go. Back to acceptance. All right. Humility, acceptance, gratitude. Done.
Done.
What are you going to talk about next time?
Next episode, I will be discussing like 3 different books that I read over the pandemic about how to enhance and improve your communication with your romantic partner.
Awesome. So looking forward to that.
All right. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of This Spiritual Fix. Tune in next time when we go through different types of communication with loved ones. And be sure to like us on Instagram, follow us on Instagram, do whatever you want on Instagram. Hopefully it involves us. And be sure to send us some ratings and reviews on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much and have a great day. Hi, Kristina, co-host of This Spiritual Fix. Has listening to our podcast stirred up something for you with the primal wounds? The good news is you have access, and that is the first step to transforming these wounds. We created support packages to help you through this process, and they're available on our website, www.thisspiritualfix.com. These packages were designed by Anna and I, combining techniques and hacks from our own experience working through our own wounds. Each packet contains a workbook and 2 meditations, one about forgiving those who have wounded you, including yourself, and one about reprogramming old beliefs. You can buy an individual support package, or for those next level processors, all 5 packets: abandonment, injustice, rejection, betrayal, and humiliation. Available on our website in our shop.